This session's moderator is Richard Eldridge, co-founder and CEO of LenddoEFL, a world leader in identity. You can go up on stage, it's fine. Well, world leader in identity verification and scoring technology using non-traditional data. Richard is known as one of the pioneers in the outsourcing industry in the Philippines.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Richard Eldridge and I'm moderating this 20-minute session today with two of the leaders in the wallet space. Hopefully we're going to share some new insights with you, some things you didn't know, and have a bit of fun this afternoon. But before we start, I thought it'd be interesting, put your hand up if you have a wallet, an e-wallet. So most of you, yeah? GoPay? Who has a GoPay account? Yeah. Who has an OVO account? Okay, well, we're going to show you there's a little bit more than just OVO and GoPay out there in the world, and share a bit of that. To start with, I'm going to hand you over to Chris, who's going to give a quick introduction, followed by Shailesh, and then we're going to come back and go through a series of questions over the next few minutes. So, Chris, why don't you give a quick introduction to what you do and what you're up to?
Yeah, firstly, thank you very much to Wild Digital for having us here. So BigPay is a challenger bank for Southeast Asia. So we do everything that a bank does, but we do it 10 times better, 10 times cheaper, and we operate on an open loop model. So we issue a card as well, a MasterCard, so we get acceptance everywhere. Our main investor is actually AirAsia, so one of the largest, I guess, Pan-ASEAN companies. So it's very interesting because they have 90 million customers a year and they have super high resolution data. When you get on a plane, you can't lie about your age or any of your ID when you actually get on. So we have like a very interesting database across the whole of Southeast Asia to actually build essentially what is a challenger bank. So we've started in Malaysia. We are growing faster than actually all of the other challenger banks in Europe did in their first year. So it's been quite humbling. It's been quite a journey. And yeah, that's BigPay.
Thank you. Shailesh.
Very nice. Can I check how many bankers in the room, please? Okay, we'll try not to offend you, but I'm going to say some of the things that were just said. MatchMove is a B2B platform. We're a wallet factory. We believe that there are going to be hundreds, if not thousands, of wallets out there. Counterintuitive, I know, but we're actually proving that there is a need for many, many more specialized wallets. We also believe that wallets are going to grow up to become banks. The wallets that you are used to, the very first ones you saw years ago, typically from telcos, were restricted, rigid, and pretty useless. We saw the next wave coming out from banks, and banks have really tried, but banks have legacy issues in terms of their own tech, their own layered decision-making. MatchMove partners with banks, and what we do is we take wallet technology to a whole new level where the wallet is actually a bank account. We call it spend, send, and lend. It's a full-on bank account which can be inserted inside any app. So if you're a pizza delivery app, if you're an airline, if you're another bank, we can put a full-on bank account inside any app, compliant, regulated, secure, everything else. We have just seen our numbers for 2018 projected to December. At the current run rate, we're reporting 1,000% year-on-year growth. We're across 7 countries. We power a bank in any app, as we call it. Airlines, lending companies, retail, all kinds of segments are saying, I want my own wallet. I want it not to be a baby wallet. I want it to be a bank account. I don't want to deal with other branded wallets. I want to have my own resolution on data and everything else. And that's where MatchMove is positioned.
Perfect, thank you. I'm going to pose some questions to the two of them now. Slightly different models. We'll see how they respond to these questions. And the first I have for them is around, in Indonesia you have OVO versus GoPay. In Southeast Asia you have Ali versus Tencent. There's a lot of people on the street saying they're the winners, there's no space for anyone else. And if there is space for anyone else, how are they going to differentiate? So Chris, how are you going to differentiate? Is there space? How are you going to kind of compete in this battle?
Sure. So I guess what you described was essentially what's happened in Indonesia and what's happened in China. And China is a market of 1.34 billion people. Indonesia is also the biggest market in Southeast Asia, it's half of the whole of ASEAN. And they're closed markets in some ways because China doesn't allow foreign payment systems in. Indonesia had relatively, still does, the large unbanked population. So therefore, the traditional payment infrastructure doesn't exist in those countries. In the rest of the world, not everywhere, there is a lot of other payment infrastructure. So essentially what we do, which is the same as the other challenger banks, is we run on open loop schemes. And that means that we have merchant acceptance of like 40 million merchants around the world. And I think that there is room for essentially many different players. Just because you've been successful in one big market with maybe a benign regulatory environment or infrastructure that suits your model, doesn't mean that it's always going to be that way and doesn't mean that it works in other countries.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll address it at two levels. First of all, let's just get a little philosophical. Is there anything on this planet that is dominated by one single system? Politics? Nope. You have different shades of communism and capitalism. Take any part of the world that you touch. Hotel chains. Is there one big hotel chain? Is there one big bank, as we were talking about? Is there one big airline? The fact is that as economies evolve, as tastes change, as technology evolves, there is always room for more and more players. So step one, we don't believe that the game is over and, the first 2 or 3 guys who are in have made the most noise, burning the most cash, are going to be the ones standing. Human society looks for choice and looks for local choices, and we expect the same to happen with wallets. Secondly, if a ride-hailing company can become a wallet, if other businesses can become wallets, what happens to the thousands of other businesses that are making up the economies? Are they just going to sit there? They're all going to start waking up as they are, and they're going to say, well, if that guy can build a wallet, and he can get user data, and he can get a piece of the revenue, and he determines his destiny in terms of what the user experience is, I want one too. The reason they haven't done it is because they don't have the technology, et cetera, et cetera. So where MatchMove is positioned is we're, as we say, a wallet factory on steroids. We allow anyone who wants to produce that. And the best metaphor I can give in that example is the airline industry, if I can use that one. If you take all the airlines, AirAsia, Singapore Airlines, Garuda, everyone else, they have a brand, they market it like crazy, they choose their price points, they have allied products to create loyalty, everything else. And they all, in their efforts, try to make themselves unique, just like the wallet guys are doing. But they all buy their aircraft from Boeing or Airbus. Where MatchMove is positioned is we are creating thousands of competitors. We already have launched across many countries. We see more and more new entrants coming in. Retail chains saying, I want to be a wallet. Airlines, already, some more of them are coming. So we're of the view that, to answer your question, where MatchMove is positioned, we're selling picks and shovels to the miners. We're selling aircraft to the airlines. We believe that it will not be dominated by one or two. And I particularly want to, if I can go to your point, Chris, it's so early and there's not enough data to project into the future. Just because Alipay is so big in China, let's admit it, they'll admit it themselves. There were barely any regulations in China. They grew up in a very unregulated area, and that's why we know about the challenges they're having outside of China. They're struggling. We all know it, because they keep coming up with something called a regulator, which they've never heard about. Regulators, in our eyes, are the great equalizers, and it's equal for everyone. So we don't think that the game is over, it's just started, and what we see going forward is that there's going to be high fragmentation. It's going to ultimately depend on the user and the loyalty you have to it.
Perfect, thank you. As you see, there's two very different business models, and we have a mix of various different tech entrepreneurs and investors in the room. We have a B2C business here and a B2B business. How do you see yourself scaling and creating true enterprise value in the B2C? And then I'll ask the same for the B2B business.
So I'd say we're different in terms of we're not a large enterprise creating a wallet. We don't call ourselves a wallet. Our main investor is an airline. What we have done is we've built from scratch all of our technology. So the business model of MatchMove makes perfect sense to most big enterprises that are not prepared to do what we're doing. Tony Fernandez is quite visionary and wants to build new businesses from scratch. And that's what we've done. We've hired some of the smartest people from all around the world to do that. And so it's a very different business model. So what we've done is we're building essentially like Challenger Bank from scratch. We're plugging into the landscape that is Southeast Asia, into, I guess, the distribution that AirAsia had. But we would essentially, our DNA is not to use other people's technology, but there is a huge market for using other people's technology.
So to your question about enterprise value, in that regard, we, unlike Chris here, who has a big brother to drive and fund, we are VC funded. We have institutions now investing as well. For us, enterprise value and growing it is critical. At one level, I see us, we are becoming a SaaS business. So the pricing, the structuring, the revenue model is around obviously a combination of regular recurring revenue and also transaction fees. Our go-to-market is different. We're not B2C. So for us, banks are absolutely essential. And whatever people say about banks, they're in different classes. There are some that are way ahead of the pack. We partner with those. And what we do then is create a value chain where the end enterprise is able to service their customers with the capabilities they want. In that value chain, we extract data, we extract revenue, and we create a recurring subscription base. So that's the basis on which we do it. We have avoided the raise and burn approach. Maybe there's a room for that. We think it's great if all the big guys, the big names are taking money, burning like shit and making noise, because what it is doing is causing attention to our space and causes more and more to want to come to us. So enterprise value for us is, in that respect, probably what you'd call a traditional SaaS approach.
Perfect, thank you. We're in Indonesia, has more people than any other ASEAN country. But most people have ASEAN growth on their mind. Very few companies are operating or have thoughts of only operating in one country. Macro numbers look great. But as you peel back, I guess, the layers of the onion, there's a lot more beneath each of the countries, whether it's cultural in nature, regulation. Can you share a little bit about your strategy and how many countries you've got to be in, how quickly you have to get there, and how you're going to manage some of those maybe differences and managing potentially remote teams if you've done it or plan to do it in the future?
I would say that the most challenging thing, and I think we touched upon it earlier, was actually licensing. So that's the difference in the licensing in different countries, and that's by far and above the most challenging area for anyone in fintech, anyone in finance, and anyone trying to scale their business, especially in Southeast Asia. There's no unified passporting of financial services like there is in the EU or in other markets. So that's going back to the original first question, which is why it's going to be a fragmented market and there's going to be no clear winner in Southeast Asia. So I'd say being able to deal with regulators in an intelligent and constructive way is the most important thing. I think in terms of operations, I think it's actually less challenging. I mean, you can centralize your software, you can centralize your tech, you can deploy it across Southeast Asia. It's just essentially adapting to each regulatory requirement.
So to your question about so many markets and which ones do you choose, as a B2B, we decided day one we'd build a B2B business and go full intention, global domination, of course, starting in Southeast Asia. So the approach we took for the first year and a half is built the model and actually went to almost every Southeast Asian country to see where we would get first bite. So we went across Philippines, Vietnam, even went that way to India, and started to get a sense of how quickly, because it is a different approach, and we decided we'd look at what the market was telling us. By the second year, last year, we decided, well, there's two markets we have to really push hard into first, and we went for the most difficult, which are India and Indonesia, because we decided that this is where we could actually prove it. Now, it's had added advantages. Both countries are big populations, large number of enterprises, which is our potential customer base. high mobile penetration, low bank account and card penetration, so huge market potential. But three, more importantly, is that because of the large populations, there's a large talent pool. And you can only look at Indonesia to see how many unicorns are popping up here, India the same. So finding the tech talent, finding the product managers, etc., has become also easier in these two countries. So more difficult, but also more resources. Now that we've got that engine going, we know how to do it in other smaller countries, and now we'll just work our way through as we're now pushing into Philippines, pushing into Vietnam again, pushing into LATAM. So really just went broad sweep first 2 years, picked a couple, went deep, and now replicating again.
Thank you. You know, a lot of talk is around wallet being for remittance. It's getting commoditized, these markets now. There's very little differentiation between different people and different wallets. You know, is there a race to the bottom as you see it? And if there's not, how do you see that your product or service will be able to differentiate you in the long term from the others out there?
So I think we've taken a very different approach to every other e-wallet, and I said at the beginning, we don't classify ourselves as an e-wallet. They've essentially gone down the route of, on a large part, closed-loop merchant acquiring and then offering discounts, which are ultimately unsustainable. It's a race to the bottom and doesn't work. There are other business models around the world, especially in Europe and now North America and South America, of challenger banks, which is essentially working. And we're essentially the first at-scale challenger bank in Southeast Asia. And we offer people value for money. So it's totally counterintuitive. So instead of being ripped off on fees or paying a lot on foreign exchange, we're saying, look, we're going to use tech to cut down costs, and we're going to offer people much better value and better product than their banks can offer them. And in a similar way that you're doing, but you're offering it at the picks and shovel stage, we're doing it kind of full-end consumer-facing approach. And yeah, that's how we differentiate. We just build really good product.
Yeah, I think if you take the view about, so many wallets commoditized, race to the bottom, that is one perspective. From where we see it, the wallet is not just a wallet. It's a means of delivering a certain kind of value. It starts out maybe for the financially unincluded, right, excluded. And so never had one, I've got it now. I want to do digital transactions. I can finally do it without ever having to go to a bank. It comes to me. And so you're making a difference to the quality of life of people there. And there's a certain amount of effort for building loyalty and the cradle-to-grave approach. Everything an MBA guy will tell you, it's got to be done. What we're also seeing, though, as a new front has opened up, which we weren't expecting, is that this whole wave of digitization is being adopted by the traditional big companies as well. And they're saying, I need to digitize everything. And if you start to think about it, when you say I want to digitize everything, it goes beyond messaging, content, everything else. Sooner or later, it's going to touch money. And so when you have big organizations saying, I want to digitize my supply chain, I want everyone at various stages to be able to pay along one platform without having to go to different banks, et cetera, et cetera. So we see a whole new front opening up for us. So in either of those cases, we don't see a race to the bottom. And I want to pick on Chris's point about value for money. And as long as you're providing value for money, I mean, if all of us in this room, I doubt anyone has just one card in your wallet. You probably have 2 or 3. And which one do you pull out first to pay with? The one that you think is going to give you the most benefits. Cards have been commoditized. Cards are absolutely commoditized from Visa, MasterCard, whoever else it is. But why do you pick one over another? Because it adds a certain amount of value. And that's where there will be some that race to the bottom. Absolutely, they'll crash and burn. But we see as long as we add the value around it, whether it's the tie-up with the airlines, the hotels that you guys have, everything else you do, they'll survive.
Perfect. Well, we have a few minutes left. I thought before we close out, it would be good to get from each of you a prediction for 2019. What big thing do you think we'll see in the wallet battle in 2019? And we can look forward to as consumers or entrepreneurs or investors?
I actually think it will be the biggest year of adoption. I think you've seen, I can talk from a Malaysian perspective, you've seen QR codes everywhere, everyone doing that. And now suddenly other guys are coming in, Grab are going to issue a card, there are other people coming in issuing it. It's a year that there's going to be massive adoption and the big boys start spending and burning money. Some will work, some will not. But from a consumer point of view, it's going to be ubiquitous, which will be good for everyone, essentially. Some will win, some will lose, but it's going to be everywhere, even more than now.
Can I agree with that and then maybe say what I'd hope to see, as opposed to, I agree that's what we're going to see, adoption and widespread usage. What I'd hope to see is that the regulators would start really regulating and enabling rather than finding another reason to add more regulations to the process. I think that what is in certain countries, not all, regulators are responding in panic, and they're saying, we don't understand this, let's layer on more regulations. And so I wish in 2019 that regulators, just compare notes and see that this is a good thing.
Perfect. Well, with that final note, we have something to look forward to in 2019 with all the uncertainty around the world. I'd like to thank my two panelists for the last 20 minutes of their valuable time, hopefully sharing you some insights, and you can walk away with something useful today. Thank you very much, everyone.